Hey, how are you guys? Excellent. Well, good to meet you. I'm Promise Phelon, and I'm from the Valley, so I just flew over a couple days ago. My background, I'm currently the CEO of an organization called TapInfluence. We're the leader in the influencer marketing space. I've been a CRO, a COO. I've started 3 companies, sold 2, and got 1 piece of experience in one. And my goal today is to do something very simple, is to talk to you about how you can change your revenue or business model for the organization without killing yourself or anyone else. So hopefully that comes across today. So I signed up to do this event, and I was like, maybe a year ago. And then kind of right up in the beginning, I thought, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to go there, do the conference, and then fly home. So I decided to arrive a few days earlier, and I went to the Cliffs of Moher. Anyone know where that is? Okay. This is going to be interactive, so just be prepared for that. So went to the Cliffs, and also went and saw the Guinness presentation. So I was able to kind of experience what happens there. And to oversimplify what I'm going to talk about today is really by saying, look, to change your business model and not kill yourself or anyone else, there's got to be 2 elements. One is luck, which is seeing the cliffs without any fog or wind. And second is the meticulous process that the Guinness clan has gone through to build one of the best beers in the world, right? The temperature at which they roast, the type of water, how they process. So the meticulous part is what I'll talk about today of how we did it, but we also had a lot of luck in this process. So, most companies in this room are early stage organizations, and within the first 5 years, 2 to 3 years of your company, you're going to change your business model multiple times. So we went from services to SaaS, but you might be going from a freemium model to a paid-based model, or going from enterprise to selling to the SMB. So I think these things are going to be relevant for you. So what does TapInfluence do? So TapInfluence today is the leading influencer marketing platform. And so we are a software package that takes brands that want to have influencers create content for them, and we match those influencers and brands, and then we automatically create content and measure that content from piece of content to actual revenue. But Tap started out as a services company. So TapInfluence was started in Boulder, Colorado, in a library as a professional services business. So imagine people behind the scenes pulling levers and running programs for the largest brands in the world and helping them connect with influencers. So pretty interesting. In 2013, the founder said, you know what, we can actually automate this. We can make this easier. And so they built this idea essentially with macros in Excel, and turned it into a really cool business, doing about $1 million. And then in 2013, raised a venture round, a small round, and said, we're actually going to take this concept and build a software package and make this a SaaS company. So they worked on it for a couple years, and then in 2015, the board said, we're going to bring someone in who's been a software as a service executive and CEO, and we're going to turn this into a software company. And I remember, you join whenever you're recruited in as a CEO, everyone lies to you. They tell you you have tons of money, you don't have to raise money anytime soon, everything's great, the culture's awesome, it's going to be easy, just come in here and crush it, right? That's actually not what happens, typically. It's hard as fuck in most cases. So I walked into an organization that had 32% gross margins and was selling anything that would come in the door. And as we know from selling software and being a SaaS business, that's not how you build a scalable business. And so we were obsessed about one thing through this entire process: ideal customer profile. We were obsessed. So going back to Guinness, where Guinness is, they care about the water and they care about, the temperature at which things are roasted in the wheat and the hops. We were obsessed with who is our ideal customer, what's their level of readiness, and how can they and will they use and pay for our software. And so the day I walked in, we took all of our customers, none of them were self-service, And we said, okay, we're going to profile these people, and then we're going to come up with an ideal customer profile for who we believe the right customer is. And so I'll talk about how we did that, but we were able to change the business model from services to SaaS in 3 quarters, 3 business quarters. So going from a managed services model to a software as a service scalable company in 3 quarters. So as you can see, in 2015, I joined in April. We completed the transition on January 1st. We closed the $14 million Series B by April of the fall of 2016. We went through a massive process of scaling and kind of figuring out who our ideal customer was, and moved the company from Boulder to Silicon Valley in 2017. And we're on our way to some pretty impressive growth, which I'll talk about in a second here. So this is the pre-PP era, Phelon era, is, the company spent 2 years going back and forth. And the reason why most organizations that try to change their business model fail at it is because they're afraid of failure. So one of the things I agreed with my board when going through this process was it could kill the company. So basically taking down the existing business model and then booting an entirely new one. So that was the first phase of change. And the first board meeting, April 20th, 2015, I said, what are our goals? What does success look like? And so we identified 3 objectives: 80% gross margins, 97% of our customers would be fully self-service, and the campaigns that were managed on our platform would be done without humans, right? So these were the goals that the board set. And I immediately went back and negotiated my compensation package because these are freaking hard. So that had to be renegotiated. But seriously, the 80% gross margin was basically 50 points above where we were as an organization. So a pretty big step. So what we did was we essentially said, okay, who's our ideal customer for this product? Based on what we thought the market was. So we did a TAM and SAM analysis and said, okay, here's our ideal customer. And then we compared our current business capabilities against what that customer's expectations were. How do they buy? How do they need customer success to work? How do they implement software? And we went the entire process and realized that there were 4 or 5 major product changes we had to make immediately, and that we had to change our pricing, and we had to completely refactor it. But of all of our customers, we had several dozen that looked like our ideal customer profile. And so we essentially built a transition plan that helped us get those customers to stick with us while we went through that process. And then we made some product changes and built the capability. The one secret to the success of how this worked for us was product marketing. Now, you don't typically have product marketing individuals or people inside of early stage companies. But one of my board members loves to say that startups are vehicles or vessels for market exploration. And the person at the helm is often the CEO. The person I want behind me is a product marketing person. So the way that I define product marketing is someone who sits between the market and the company, enabling them to talk to customers, understand prospects, and be part of the sales machine. And so we hired a brilliant product marketer, and her #1 objective was take that ideal customer profile, do the market analysis, and then help us continue to iterate what that profile looks like based on data that we're getting from the market. And one of the things that we did pretty early on, and I know David Skoke talked yesterday, and he's kind of a big guy on unit economics. So we baselined all of our unit economics. What was the profitability, lifetime value, cost of acquisition. We even got to the top of the funnel metrics on what it took to acquire this ideal customer. So we baselined it. So the next phase, we were able to retain a lot of our key accounts. We grew several of them and got them into the self-service model. And then we offboarded about 60 customers to agencies. So it meant essentially taking a large portion of our revenue stream and giving that away to someone else because those customers didn't meet the readiness criteria necessary to scale and to get to SaaS. So this part, someone said earlier, salespeople love to have happy ears. When you're a CEO, you kind of want things to go well. Some things don't go as well. So one of the things that we did was, we're making the conversion. We've got a new revenue model, new pricing. We've got a new fresh product that customers are excited about. We essentially took the team that was delivering professional services to our customers, and I made them customer success people. It didn't work. It did not work. So what you realize in SaaS, as you guys know, is customer success people have to have a framework for what it takes to make the customer successful. What competencies does the customer need? What information do they have? What data? How do they measure success? What are their KPIs? Customer success people are enablers of success. Customer service people respond to requirements that customers have, right? These are completely different people. And so while we have this great new product that's all self-service, that's fully SaaS, we have customers who are like, well, so what do I do now? And so our services team essentially started running programs for our customers rather than teaching them how to do it themselves. And so the one thing that I think that we could have done better in this process, and you'll see it in our numbers, is having real customer success people. And I'm a big believer in this, guys, because a customer success person can not only ensure your customer adopts faster, but that they renew and that they expand. And so we got to that place, but one of the challenges I think that we make as SaaS people is we sort of forget that the customer success function is a proactive, not a reactive one. So this was kind of April 1 of 2016, so a year later, 72% gross margins, 300% year-over-year growth, and $14 million fundraise, and we were able to raise that at a 3x over our last round, 3x on our post on our last round. So pretty good numbers. We missed the gross margin target, and mostly that was because we had people who were more on the customer services side. I'm going to pause for a second. I've never presented to Irish people. Are we all in this together? Okay, you guys with me? Excellent, excellent, because, I've had a lot to drink since I've been here. And I let a guy tell me a black Irish joke last night, and I didn't get offended. So I feel a kinship now to the Irish people. And in return, I went and I counted for him. What's my new Irish joke? How many Irish people live in the state of Texas? Anyone know? 13,333 and a turd. So that was my joke back to him. All right, so let's get back to it. So we hit our targets for the most part, but we completely moved this business. We were able to grow in the process, and the lesson learned was really around customer success. So it's 2 years in. So look at April of 2017. And we start to evaluate those core baseline benchmarks for unit economics, and we compare them, and we actually realize our ideal customer profile that we had in the initial set, it was partially right. But what we ended up with was we actually had 2 different customers that we were serving. A highly profitable one that I'm sure most of you have. You got a great customer, amazing ratios of LTV CAC, so lifetime value to cost of acquisition, which you guys all know. You want that to be over 3, according to David Skok. And so we had done that, but we also had a customer on which we were losing money. So as we went into that second year, we said, okay, let's look at this profile again. And what we learned was that we had 2 different customers. We had one customer, an enterprise customer, that was a 6.5 time LTV CAC ratio. It was insane. But we were acquiring at a rapid rate customers who were essentially 2 to 1. And the growth of the 2 to 1 customer was 3 or 4 times faster than the growth of the customer that was 6.5 to 1. So our sales team was doing what they thought they were told to do, which is go after this certain customer profile, but that customer was not as profitable. And so one of our lessons learned is, when you raise a bunch of money, as you guys all know, your desire is to start seeing growth and pumping the business. But when you're making a business model change, there's got to be enough time to get at least 6 to 8 quarters of data on those LTV CAC ratios so that we actually have found our ideal customer. So I would say the number one way to know that you found your ideal customer is that LTV CAC ratio is well above 3 to 1. So managing board expectations, I'm sure none of that is an issue for people in this room. So we had 2 existing board members, and we had a new lead investor. And so one of the things that we did, I think felt relatively well, was we over-communicated about the status of the transformation, about what was different about our business, how the customer profile was changing, and we recruited them to be part of the process with us. So as we were thinking about changes, and we lost a couple of big customers, as everyone does, we had to shed a group of customers who were the more 2 to 1. So we were looking at the business and constantly iterating as we were going through this change. And so your board, as you guys know, all they want to see are those numbers going up and to the right. And so part of one of the things that we did was we constantly managed expectations. And so we kind of we built something. Basically, we built a report card. And so we'd produce as a company a report card every week, and we would look at how we as an organization at acquiring and retaining that 6.5 to 1 customer. And our board loved it. And so it looked at engineering, sales, customer success, ops, and G&A, and how well are those organizations mapping against what that customer needs from us, and how well are we getting at retaining and acquiring and growing those accounts. So things like expansion, things like negative churn. So all those metrics were ones that we incorporated into this report card, and we did it every week. So it was good for the organization, but also great for our board. So lastly, kind of to summarize, and if you're an investor, I'll give you what the vertical axis is, so you can actually see what the numbers are. But we went through quite a bit of change. So 2014 to 2015, a lot of growth. In 2016, what you see us do there, and this is our net ARR, is you see us churning out the customers that were the 2 to 1 customers. And then into 2017 and into 2018, obviously 18 is in the future, so you see how massive that growth is. But in 2017, we're acquiring many, many more of the 6.5 to 1 customers versus the 2 to 1s. So through this entire process, you can see we didn't stall. We actually grew quite a bit in 2015 and changed the trajectory of the business. And then going into 2018, we're in a much better position because we know who our ideal customer is, we know who's profitable, we know who's not, and we've built the customer success infrastructure to support that. All right, so I talked about not killing your company and also not killing yourself or anyone else. So one of the things I do, I talk a lot to startup organizations in the Valley, and the thing that, if you're in a SaaS business or you're a CEO, one of the hardest parts of the job is kind of not killing yourself or not, killing anyone else. But a couple of things that I've learned in my experience and I learned in this experience was, everything is a learning opportunity. So there is no fail. There's just how do you learn from it? How do you grow from it? Culture is easier to create than change. So just a personal experience. So in the last company I was associated with, my founders were very, very meticulous. And so Salesforce was built well. The marketing systems were built well. Well, when you go into an organization that starts out as a services business, those things maybe aren't architected the way that they should be. And so coming into an organization, the realization is that culture is much easier to build than to change. And so, as we kind of look at our company cultures as we're building them, being really clear about what your cultural attributes are, it's huge. And it'll change how your business runs. We're now a data-centric technology company, but we were a services-oriented, managed services business just 2 years ago. Third, I don't know if you guys have, there was a podcast about, maybe 6 months ago called Startup. And it was the CEO of a company called Gimlet. I don't know if has anyone ever heard of this podcast? Gimlet. So Gimlet Media did a startup podcast, and they talk about how your shadow qualities are the things that really hold back or accelerate your business. And my advice, and the thing that I did through this process, was I really leaned on my executive coach, because the one thing that my personality is, in Silicon Valley, you want to go, you want to go, you want to go, you want to go. But the process of changing a business model requires that you actually spend a lot of time just studying who your best customers are and not scaling quickly, but actually taking that process very slowly. And I have a rule, fourth, called a no vampire rule. So if you run a company or in any senior position, you have your day job, but there are the things that keep you up at night. And if it's a board member, a person, a customer, or a partner, get rid of it. Anything that's keeping you up at night that's not working is a vampire. And so as we were going through this process, it's easy to kind of manage the machinations of changing a business model, but what becomes impossible are people who basically suck your time and your intention and your energy. And so for me, it's a no vampire rule. Anything that's a vampire has to get out of the business. So you can take that, and you don't have to even attribute it to me. And lastly, when in doubt, discipline, not motivation. So as you're building out your business and you're building out your brand and you're changing your business model, the motivation to rah, 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 and get your teams excited is important, but at its core, what is the discipline that you want to build in the business? And that goes back to culture. So I think that's it for me. I've got about 9 minutes, and I've got some questions that are coming in here, so I'll address those. Excellent. How did you manage the change with employees, especially senior members, during the transition phase? It's a great question. Maybe some partners in the audience. So how do we manage to change? I mean, I would say overall it was difficult, and some things we did well. And to quote Condoleezza Rice, mistakes were made. So the things that I think we did well in this process. So two things that we did well, one thing that we didn't. So two things that we did well is we talked a lot about what it means to be a SaaS business. And so in this case, we were educating a ton of the employees on what is a SaaS business, because many of them hadn't been in SaaS organizations. So we did a lot of education around metrics, top of the funnel, what is bottom of the funnel, how do you think about this, what are the key SaaS metrics, and how do you manipulate those? So we really educated the team on that. On the senior side, we did well was we had bonuses that were tied to the transformation. So how quickly are we making this? How healthy is that? What are our margins like? So we had pretty much untraditional metrics coming out of that transition. I also hired people who had done this before. So it was really a lot about how do you harness their experience making a business model change. So I think on the great sides, we educated a lot of people. We also hired and compensated people based on making that transition. So what we didn't do well was there were a lot of people who, were kind of along for the ride versus people who were interested in driving to that change. And so I think the thing that we could have done better was really changing our customer success team faster to be more of a proactive one. Okay. What were the milestones you achieved to be able to raise $14 million while finding product market fit, which seems impossible here in Europe? I think that's Europe, at a pre-scaling phase. So what were the milestones? So one was, we had obviously, I think let me back up. You're always finding product market fit. You are always evolving. If you're in a competitive market that's growing quickly, product market fit is not static. Product market fit is constantly evolving. What your customers need, what your pricing can be, is constantly changing. So just from an American's perspective, I believe that product market fit is not something that stays static. It's something that's constantly changing. So what milestones did our VCs measure? They looked at our growth rate. We grew 300% with almost no resources. That was one. They looked at our retention and renewal rates on the customers who went from services to SaaS. And we had a great story for where the market was going. So in terms of raising a Series B, a $14 million Series B, we had the metrics of understanding who our then ideal customer was, demonstrating growth and retention in that cohort, and then showing that we could acquire more customers at a reasonable rate. So those were the milestones that we had. It's not impossible. I think it just really matters, thank you. I think it just matters on, who are your investors, and also where are you in the market. And we're in a rapidly growing market. Let me see, okay, so John's question's great. What's the difference between a 2 customer and a 6.5x customer, and what is your churn or cost to sell? So our renewal rate and retention rate on the 6.5 customer is over 100% because those customers are rapidly expanding. And so we have negative churn on the 6.5 customer, and that customer is a large enterprise B2C company that has internal resources that can run and manage their own programs and also have great products. And there's a couple other attributes as well. So we were able to profile that customer. They tend to be larger. The customer who is the 2.5 customer, they're episodic. They're not using influencers on an ongoing basis. So that 2.5 customer is more of a, 2 customers are more of a programmatic customer who wants to be more campaign-based. So we are building a pricing model that allows us to lower our cost of acquisition for that customer so they can be more profitable while building our sales team to go after the 6.5x customer. I hope I answered your question. If not, just let me know here. Did customers embrace self-service? How'd you convince them not just to expect your team to do it for them? So it took certain customers a lot longer to do that. So not every customer embraced self-service. And the ones that didn't, we gave them to an agency customer. So we picked 6 agencies that were great users of our methodology. And then we essentially trained them on how we wanted them to deliver for our customers. And so we gave agencies about 60 customers in the first 3 quarters. And so those were the customers who did not want self-service. The ones who did, we looked for customers who were using tools like Bright Edge, people who were doing quantitative-based marketing and using marketing technologies. We assumed that if they had the resources, they could self-serve on our platform as well. So we actually profiled our ideal customer based on their ability to self-serve and their readiness to do so. So not all of them changed. We had to do a lot of education, a lot of training for those accounts. But the one thing that I think convinced them was we showed them the productivity gains in doing it themselves and the monetary gains in doing it themselves. So that's how we convinced those customers to go on that journey. And for those who didn't, we gave those customers to agencies to manage. And we took a referral fee from those agencies for those customers. So how did you adapt your marketing strategy? Edward, nice for showing up today. Thank you, man. That's a good question. So as we were making the change, we had to talk about ourselves now as a technology company, but the market knew us as a services company. So the most efficient way to do that is we did a ton of PR around our most successful customers, and we did a lot of product release announcements. So kind of awareness on the awareness side. We did a lot of change there. And then secondly, we did a lot of marketing to what we call the industry influencers. G2 Crowd was a great resource for us. We also did a lot of work with Gartner and the big kind of agency, the big analyst firms to help us get that message. So our marketing strategy became, at the bottom of the funnel, very profile-driven, and at the top of the funnel, very product and awareness-driven. And in the middle, we leveraged the analyst firms to really accelerate our adoption by big companies. We do have a channel program, so you can send me an email at ceo@tapinfluence.com. Very brave transformation process. Thank you, Graham. Did you get much resistance from those legacy customers you brought over to the new model, and how did you manage it? We had some. We had several customers who made the transition and said, you know what, I need more time, or this is not a transformation we want to make with you. And so in those cases, we had 1 major customer loss in this process, 2 major customer losses in this process. But for the most part, it really became either, extending the period on which that we would service them, and I think that's why you saw our gross margins kind of settle at 72 and then get to 80. So we did turn the levers for some of those customers who were larger and more profitable when we got that feedback. But what we essentially did was we built an advisory board, and so we started to get more feedback on the product because the legacy issues tend to be product issues. So we made some changes that were necessary. Is your ICP, going to the next question, if your ICP with a customer-specific industries, what common problem, right? So our ICP starts with companies that are in a handful of industries. So consumer packaged goods, food, beauty, fashion, retail. And the common problem is that they spend a lot of money on social in the efforts of trying to convert those customers to be e-commerce enabled. So I'm out of time, but it can be done. If you have any questions, please email me at ceo@TapInfluence. Thanks, guys. Cheers.